Greetings, Watford fans. I'm Omar Moore, and welcome to the Orns 10-minute take on Brentford 2, Watford 1 in the Premier League on Friday night at the Brentford Community Stadium. An awful second half undid the Watford in this match. Watford got off to a good start by scoring first through the brilliance of Emmanuel Dennis. He's scoring his seventh Premier League goal of the season for Watford, and that was Watford doing the things that they do and have done so well with Emmanuel Dennis. But unfortunately, once the first half ended, there was such a thing called a second half, and there was such a thing as Watford defending. And unfortunately, it's the same old song that Watford fans have seen all season long. There are defensive liabilities that are so massively obvious that January must come with some defensive reinforcements and a defensive commitment that is going to have to be the priority at this club if they want to stay in the Premier League. This was a very bad performance defensively second half, and it was a shame because it undid, I think, a good defensive cohesiveness in the first half of the game. But the game does not end at one half. You have to play two halves, and you have to have game management. That's one of the things I talked about in the Friday focus, is that for Watford to win this game, they would have to game manage well. I said I felt that in the Friday focus, I said that this game would not have more than three goals in it, and that if Watford were to win the game and get the odd goal in that three, they were going to have to be the team that game managed the game well. And of course, they did not. I say, of course, because we've seen this so many times this season where Watford have been very poor defensively in games. And this time, as opposed to the game against Leicester, where it was the first half that really hurt them, it was William Troost-Ekong at the end of this game that gave Watford no points when they should have had 1 point in this game. Brentford were by far the better team on the night. A very poor second goal given up. I mean, the first goal was not great either. And that came after, I think, around 84 minutes or so on the clock. Watford had done their darndest to keep a clean sheet, but they were shambolic in this second half. They sat way too deep. They allowed Brentford to come on to them, which I think is a big mistake throughout the second half to do. And all Brentford did in that second half was push forward for the equalizer. Forward, forward, forward. Watford did absolutely nothing to try to neutralize that in the second half of the game. And as a result, they chose to sit on a 1-0 lead, which I think is a massive mistake. They weathered the storm through the first 15 minutes of that second half, but then they really sat in very deep when they had no need to do that. I do wonder about what the wisdom of bringing Ken Summer was on and back in this game. It was good to see him. It was good to see that he made the bench after all the hard work after being injured and his recovery and everything else. But I do think that he should have at least had one game to sit out and watch what was going on before being brought back in to a game like this particular one against a team that is a newly promoted team like yourselves. I think that this game needed much more on the end of Sema sitting out of it. He obviously would not be 100% in this game. And as a result, putting him in a game like this, where he really had very few touches indeed of the ball, was probably not going to be the good thing. But this is not Ranieri's fault tonight. This defeat is down to these Watford players who, one of them in particular, who has been a massive letdown to this club in key moments. He, incredibly enough, I should say, remarkably enough, he had a good, solid first half. In fact, all the back line did. Craig Cathcart covered very well in the first half. Kiko Femenia was very good throughout the game. His coverage off the ball was very good. He was the extra runner to track back the Brentford attacker and clear the ball. He did that over and over and over again. Jeremy Ngaki, I thought, was decent, had some good moments in the game as well. I thought they all performed pretty well in that first half, defensively speaking. And of course, going forward, I don't think we have any problems there. We just needed to be a bit more clinical with some of the endeavor. We didn't have a whole lot of opportunities going forward the first half, but we really needed to be sharper. And we could have even had a 2-0 lead early in the second half. But the point is that you don't play 45 minutes of a game, you play 90 plus. And in this league, if you do not play the full 90 minutes, if you do not game manage, you are going to be in a whole heck of trouble, especially away from home. And what Watford did tonight was what they had done under Cisco, which is try to sit on a lead, a 1-0 lead away from home. It doesn't work. It really doesn't work unless you're Manchester City, unless you're Liverpool, unless you're Chelsea. You're not going to be successful on the road sitting on a 1-0 and trying to park a bus. You're not parking the bus against Brentford. Brentford are absolutely a team that can open you up. They did this against Liverpool. I mean, people forget that they scored 3 against Liverpool. I mean, I don't know why this Watford team decided tonight to sit deep for the entire second half, but that was always going to be fool's gold to be sitting on a 1-0 lead at Brentford, a team that shows you and has shown you throughout the season that they are not afraid to go forward in games. I told you they average a goal and a half to 2 goals a game, and they met that average tonight. And I said, absolutely, again, I'm going to remind everybody. I said this on the Friday Focus. I'll repeat it. If Watford were to win this game and get the odd goal in 3, because I said this game would not have more than 3 goals in it, and if Watford were to be the team that would get that odd goal in 3 to give themselves the 2-1 win, they were going to have to play and game manage and defend in a way team-wise that was going to see them through to the end of the game. And they didn't. The final 15 minutes of that game was an absolute abomination. And as a result, Brentford scored 2 goals that they had no business scoring, even though I think they deserved to win the game in the end because they dominated the game, dominated the possession, dominated spells of play, dominated the spacing, dominated the channels, went up and down those channels like nobody's business throughout the game. They were very dangerous on the channels with Mbuemo, running forward on the right-hand side, runners on the left-hand side down the left channel. They were very dangerous throughout the game. So Brentford deserved to win the game, but just not in the manner that they wanted. I think that's the thing for me from a Watford perspective. Brentford deserved to win the game, but not in this manner. On the other hand, however, if you defend like that deep, you have a loss like that coming to you. You do have a loss like that coming to you. So really, it's kind of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. In some ways, Brentford didn't deserve to win it that way. They deserved to win the game, but just not in that fashion. But on the other hand, if you sit back deep for an entire second half and absolutely defend poorly and you just hoof the ball up into the air, you can't pass for a yard or 2, and you sit deep like that all second half, you do deserve to lose like that. And when you go and make a tackle in the box like that, you go to ground and make a tackle like that in the box, what are you thinking? I just really do not understand why the Watford board have not seen that one of its defenders is not up to Premier League standard. This is not about Ranieri. It's about the players. And by extension, it's about the board. The board did not properly invest in defenders. Every Watford fan watching knows this. The board knows this. I think at this point, it is fair to say that the board has questions it needs to be answering. And it's got to be about what the board is going to do in January. We're just a few weeks away from January, and the transfer deadline window will close next month at some point, whether it's at the very end of the month, I think, or whenever it is in January. But the point is that this board now must admit to itself that the defensive areas were where they did not invest properly in the summer of 2021. They did not invest well, and they underinvested in the defending. And the board is going to have to realize now that the reason why Watford have 11 Premier League losses this season, 11 of them, more than any other team, is because their defending is absolutely shocking. And because they do not have a solid, consistent defensive base and foundation. Ranieri was beginning to give them that shape. He was beginning to balance out each phase of play, each third of the pitch. And there were signs that the defense was improving against Manchester United, against Chelsea, playing some spirited football against them and some good defensive work against Chelsea. Chelsea won the game because they had 2 world-class players who scored goals that we're listen, that's just individual skill and effort. You can't fault that. But the reason why this team has lost 11 games has got everything to do with its back four and everything to do with the central defense and everything to do with one player who has cost us, at least in my count, 3 games this season in the Premier League. We've lost all 3 of those games. I'm not going to mention his name because I've mentioned his name many a time, and I'm fed up of mentioning his name. And Watford fans know exactly who it is I'm talking about. And I do not think that we can live in the Premier League if we continue to have a defender like that doing those kinds of things in games. And that's what happens when you defend deep. That's what happens when you make these silly challenges that you don't need to be making. Watford tonight made very lazy fouls all across the pitch. If you notice that even in the first half, Watford were defensively poor in terms of the choices of fouls that they were making in the game. And there's no excuse for that. They were poor in that way defensively in the first half because they made these silly challenges on Brentford players that they didn't need to make. Josh King made a few of those. There were other players on the pitch. I'm sorry, I singled Josh King out. I think he had a good game otherwise, pretty much. But you can't make challenges like those way outside the. I mean, it's just there's no way. And again, the player that made the challenge at the end of the game that cost us all 3 points. You can't play for this football club anymore. You can't play for the football club anymore. Not for this club. Not for this club. To cost us 3 points like that, or to cost us a point, because that's what we would have had. And if we had got a point out of that, at least we could say, hey, we didn't play well in the second half, but we got something out of the game, and the results are going to slowly start to turn. And I still believe that results will start to turn, and they're going to start turning. And I think we're going to get something out of the Burnley game. I do think we're going to get something out of that game. Surely we can't be as shocking as this on Wednesday. I can only hope that we won't be. We cannot sit deep. That is the thing that I take from this game at Brentford. We cannot sit deep. It's the wrong thing to do. And you can't sit deep in these games, whether you got a 1-0 lead or not, especially away from home against a team that keeps coming at you, because you can only do that for a few minutes and then you're going to be picked apart. You're going to have a rash, stupid challenge in the penalty box. This is what happened under Cisco. This is what happened under Cisco. First game of the season. Adam Messina, stupid challenge in the penalty box. And tonight, and that was right at the end of that game. That was the 94th minute of that game. And tonight, 94th minute of this game. Penalty box, really stupid challenge that was. And as a result, we don't get any points. And I dare say there's some fellow Watford fans who don't think we deserved a point out of that game. We will be better on Wednesday. I'm confident of that against Burnley.